I'm live, and Pete Buttigieg is behind me. Not what was supposed to happen. How's it going? Um, Big show. Big show as always. It's especially tough after a debate because it means I have to break this debate down in addition to doing everything else that I normally do when it comes to covering just typical stories. So it's going to be a mixture of, your non-debate stories and a mixture of your debate stories. Uh, and the debate breakdown is going to be pretty long. Though not too long, but you'll see. So, I don't know, where do I start here? All right. rationalnational.com/join. You know the drill. Become a patron, support the show. All the links as well are below the video in the description box. There's this Patreon link. There's a link to a PayPal page, a link to a Streamlabs page I've now added there. It's similar to the PayPal page, but maybe it's easier to give on Streamlabs. And YouTube membership as well. So I'll be taking super chats in addition to all that near the end of the stream, or else, or throughout the stream as well, as I normally do. But so I guess I'll give you a little preview here. So debate stuff. I'm gonna get to a Nate Silver clip in a second. Jeremy Corbyn clip. You thought he was done. Nope. I got more from Jeremy Corbyn. What else? One impeachment story. I want to do a little bit on that. And I don't even, there's so much. I just finished shooting, because I couldn't fit it into this stream. I finished shooting a video for tomorrow that I'm going to put out there about about a focus group reacting to the debate. You have to watch that video. So that goes up tomorrow. Maybe I'll tease a little bit of the of that segment in this live stream at some point. All right. So all that stuff, you know where to go. All right. Let's get to some stories here, because I'm going to get lost in all the content I have to talk about. I'm already lost. All right. So in a video posted online, Nate Silver was discussing the Democratic primary and said something sort of nonchalantly that is something, as a journalist, you shouldn't just mention, offhand as just a part of life. No, when you mention this thing that he mentions in this clip, as I'm going to show you, you should kind of stay there and discuss why this is an issue. Let me show you what I'm talking about.
Between him, Biden, and Sanders. The same is true, more or less, in New Hampshire. Sanders is also polling relatively strongly in the third state to vote, Nevada, and his support has edged up in delegate-rich California, which votes on Super Tuesday. Here's why that matters. Sanders is close enough to Biden nationally that bounces from the early states, especially in Iowa, could make the rest of the race extremely competitive. Of course, being in striking distance in Iowa and New Hampshire and Nevada is not the same thing as actually winning those states. And if he does manage to win an early state or two and close the gap on Biden, you would expect the Democratic Party elites might make some moves to stop Sanders. So do I buy that Bernie has a shot at the nomination? Definitely, I do. Look, if you had to pick one candidate in this race, it would probably be Biden. His position is fairly robust. But Bernie has as strong a hand to play as anybody else.
Okay. Did you catch that? It's like, it was just no big deal. Let's play this again.
And if he does manage to win an early state or two and close the gap on Biden, you would expect the Democratic Party elites might make some moves to stop Sanders. So do I...
So if Bernie wins the early states, you would expect the Democratic elites to make some moves to stop Sanders. By the way, do I buy the idea that Sanders can win? Of course. Just moves on from this thing that shouldn't be, this shouldn't be a problem. Here's the thing. It is a problem, but because it's a problem, it should be focused on. This idea that the Democratic Party establishment may try and use their power to stop Bernie Sanders. How is that just an offhand remark and you keep going? That's a huge issue. But this shows you people like Nate Silver, they are so stuck in the bubble that they don't see this as anything worth, talking about. Oh, yeah, the elites may stop Sanders. By the way, Biden has a good chance. Bernie has a good chance. Talk about this. Like, that should be a serious issue. So, I mean, it also goes to show you that they are fully aware of the kind of anti-democratic power the Democratic Party puts on these candidates. So, look, it remains to be seen what kind of pressure they may put on the Bernie Sanders campaign if he does begin to win the early states. What might happen? Will Obama come out and endorse somebody else? Who knows what they're going to try and pull? But the fact that this is common knowledge among people within the establishment circles like Nate Silver, this is not a good thing. This is a very bad thing. And it also speaks to the idea that maybe there is something that may occur if Bernie does win the early states. So look, I don't want to put fear into people. Again, this is why you have to be involved. You have to volunteer, phone bank, tell your friends and family, all that stuff, because you have to be engaged in the process. Because if any of this crap does happen, then Bernie will still have a very dedicated, engaged support base that can overcome a lot of the BS that they may throw at him. But it's just amazing to me they can mention this and act like it's like whatever, no big deal. Let's move on. Incredible. All right. Let me get to the next story. This is kind of a small story. I'm not even sure how much I'm going to spend on this, but I do want to talk about it.
When you have rational national priorities.
Greenpeace have recently graded all of the candidates in the race, and I'm going to show you the scorecard. First, let me show you their methodology here. So as you see here, how grading works. Let's zoom in a little bit, or zoom out a little bit. So we scored candidates based on their responses to a Greenpeace USA survey and their public records, then assigned each a letter grade. Scores will be updated as candidates' positions change. Among Democrats, we only included Democratic candidates who have crossed the DNC debate threshold. All right, so what matters most is how each candidate would, 1, say no to fossil fuels by halting oil, gas, and coal expansion, phase out existing fossil fuel infrastructure, and center fossil fuel workers and climate-impacted communities in the transition to a renewable energy economy, and champion a Green New Deal by mobilizing our economy towards 100% renewable energy for all, creating millions of family-sustaining jobs, and securing a better future for communities that have borne the brunt of fossil fuel industry exploitation. All right, how did they grade the candidates? Boom. Bernie Sanders, A+. Elizabeth Warren, A. Tom Steyer, A-. Cory Booker, A-. Joe Biden, B+, with Julian Castro, B+. Tulsi Gabbard, B. Pete Buttigieg, B. Marianne Williamson, who I guess is still in the race, okay, B. And Amy Klobuchar, C+. So, actually, if I scroll up here, I think it's here as well. There you go. So a nearly perfect score here for Bernie Sanders. And this also goes to a couple weeks ago now, I believe, the Sunrise Movement also put out their scorecard on each of the candidates' climate plans, and Bernie Sanders as well at the top of that scorecard. So when it comes to the issue of climate change, the most important issue that there is, because it involves the future of humanity, Bernie Sanders is the top candidate when it comes to climate. And it shouldn't be any shock if you are aware of how his Green New Deal stacks up to everybody else. He has a $16 trillion Green New Deal plan. And the reason why it is so much is because it does take care of workers. So in the transition away from fossil fuels, he takes care of blue collar workers. If you have a blue collar job, you're you're not all that engaged in these political issues, but you rely on that job. Well, in the transition away from fossil fuels, you'll be taken care of for 5 years. You get full pay for 5 years, in addition to job training. And if you're near retirement, they take care of the issues with retirement. So they look after workers in the fossil fuel industry that are just there for a paycheck, because they understand, the Bernie campaign understands, that there will be an impact on people in the need to transition very quickly away from fossil fuels to renewable energies. So by taking care of workers, his plan is by far the most robust out of anybody in the race. All right. A couple of quick stories. I'm looking forward to the debate breakdown, though, I gotta say. So I kind of put it in the middle here. We're going to build to it because I'm still in debate mode. I just really enjoyed that debate. As I'll get to, I think it was the best debate that we've had so far, that we've seen so far, I should say. All right, let me do this Corbyn story. Though it's not really, it's more of a Brexit story, but I do think it's important to be engaged in this. As look, I feel sorry for people right now in the UK. You got 5 years of Boris Johnson, or at the very least 5 years of a Tory government, a Tory majority. That's a little scary. Actually, I think I heard a super chat come in. Balthazar says, go get yourself a Tim Hortons ice cap. I like political super analyst Nate's liver way more. He's unironically funny. Yeah, if you can find Nate's liver on Twitter, hilarious account. The actual account name is SILE Rabbit. Hilarious. Like I've actually muted Nate Silver on Twitter because I can't just can't take him. He's too extremely moderate, if that makes any sense. It's just, he has the worst takes, the most uninformed takes. He's a guy who really, like, his talent is math. Like, he's good at math. But when it comes to analyzing anything, he's horrible. So he's somebody who I can't even bear to see anymore. But when I do videos on it. All right. Let's get to this Brexit stuff. So while in Parliament, Jeremy Corbyn, still, I believe, Labour Party leader, though he's stepping down soon, discussed why Boris Johnson's Brexit plan is horrible for the people that live in the UK. So I'm going to share this clip, and I'm also going to share a breakdown from Labour MP Lisa Nandy as well, that also goes into this in a little more detail.
We warned before the general election the Prime Minister's Brexit deal was a terrible deal for our country, and we still believe it's a terrible deal today. I'll give way later on. It will not excuse me. It will not protect or strengthen our rights, or support our manufacturing industry, or our vital trading relationships, or protect our natural world in a time of unprecedented climate crisis. Neither will it address the deep inequality in our system or secure the interests of every nation and region in the United Kingdom. Instead, under the Conservatives, this deal will be used as a battering ram to drive us down the path of yet more deregulation and towards a toxic deal with Donald Trump, and that will sell out our National Health Service and push up the price of medicines to benefit US drug corporations. It will take us away from the essential principles we believe in of a country that looks after everybody and protects those communities left behind by the excesses of the free market. This deal does not bring certainty for communities or for business or the workforce. In fact, Mr. Speaker, it does the opposite and hardwires the risk of a no-deal Brexit next year. I'm sure that will delight many members on the benches opposite, but not those who suffer the consequences in communities and workplaces all across the country. That is why Labour will not support this bill. As we remain certain, there is a better and fairer way for this country to leave the European Union. One which would not risk ripping our communities apart, selling out our public services or sacrificing hundreds of thousands of jobs in the process. This deal is a roadmap for the reckless direction in which the government and our Prime Minister are determined to take our country.
All right. So, I mean, Corbyn pretty much breaks it down there. I'm bothered by the fact that they didn't simply run on upholding the referendum in this race. In 2017, Labour ran on accepting the results of the referendum. People wanted leave after the referendum vote on Brexit, and they ran with it. But they had a different, as you see Corbyn breaking down here, they had a different vision for Brexit than the Tories did. And in 2017, Labour made huge gains. Like, to everybody's shock, Labour made huge gains in that election and supported the Leave referendum. Then fast forward to now, they instead decided to take a different approach to Brexit. So while, the platform at large remained the same, the only major difference in the platform was on Brexit. They now during that election, this just past recent election, put up their plan was to be neutral. So basically, to put together a different plan for Brexit, put that to the put that to the British people for a vote for a second referendum, and then see, based on that, where to go from there. Horrible plan. So by capitulating to the center in their party, to the moderates that wanted him to be neutral, that wanted Labour to be neutral on Brexit instead of their 2017 position, by capitulating to moderates, they lost. And lost large. So if you see any other take, or any take that tells you, oh no, it's Corbyn or Labour too far left, that's why they lost. Complete BS. Now, it's true that there was a lot of misinformation about Jeremy Corbyn. He wasn't all that well liked by a lot of people because of that. So Corbyn's likability was definitely an issue as well. But if they were able to push the same message on Brexit in 2019 that they had in 2017, this race would have been a lot closer, and they could have actually won. But now you're stuck with 5 years of Boris Johnson, and who knows what the UK is going to look like 5 years from now. I forgot I had one more piece on this. So Lisa Nandy, she is a Labour MP. So she also kind of breaks down the Tories' Brexit plan. So she says here, I've just read the PM's Brexit plan and it has changed for the worse. Here are the big changes. Workers' rights binned. The key protections in Clause 34 now dropped entirely. No clarity on when or what rights workers will have in law by December next year. New December 2020 cliff edge enshrined in law. The new Clause 33 sets a new one-year cliff edge from our manufacturers and jobs, damaging our economy. 3. No environment or consumer rights protections. All of government's promises of a green Brexit are nowhere to be seen. 4. The trade deal process will now be conducted in secret, with the EU Parliament having more power and scrutiny than British MPs. What happened to taking back control? 5. The previous Clause 31, which I put forward with Gareth Snell, made ministers publish their objectives, have a vote on them in Parliament, and a vote on the final deal. This has all been dropped, which sends an alarming signal about the secrecy of talks with Trump. And 6, most disgracefully, Boris has U-turned on the promises made to child refugees and EU citizens who made the UK their home. New provisions mean the watchdog can be axed at the stroke of a pen by ministers. There you go. Yeah, hopefully that's the most depressing segment I have today. I think the rest is pretty joyful, but that had to be shared. All right, one more kind of a story. As you're going to see why it's kind of a story, I'm not really sure how much more I can add to this absurdity that I'm about to show you. And then the debate breakdown. And then I'm also going to be a little more specific when it comes to 2 other parts of this debate, including Elizabeth Warren piece and a CNN reaction or commentary, I guess I should say, about the debate. But first, this insanity. So Dan Bongino, who I've never talked about before because he doesn't really matter, put something out on Twitter that I just found so hilarious, and right before Christmas, so I just had to share this. So if you don't know, Bongino appears on Fox News quite a bit. He's a conservative commentator. I guess he has a podcast. I don't even know. But this is what he put out. Be sure to own the libs today and respond Merry Christmas to all the little lib snowflakes. It's small but wonderful, triggering mechanisms such as this, which will make the world a better place. Merry Christmas, libs. Now go back to the basement and cry it out. Now, this would be comedy for anybody else to post this. It would seem like this person is joking. Oh, he's not being serious, but this is Dan Bongino. Like, just look up Dan Bongino on YouTube. Find any clip of Dan Bongino, and you will realize that this tweet is serious. He thinks saying Merry Christmas will hurt the feelings of liberals. Some of these conservatives, man, they just live in their own world. Like, they invent this entire world where, you know, Nancy Pelosi is so far left and she's really progressive, and liberals don't want to hear Merry Christmas or they're gonna explode. Like, this kind of stuff is just crazy. But this is what they have to do. They have to invent their enemy, because the actual enemy are people that want everyone to have health care, want student debt canceled, want to deal with climate change, want to ensure people are being paid proper wages, want to tax the wealthiest people more. That's their actual enemy. So because that's kind of hard to fight, because those are all popular policies and messages, they have to invent this enemy that hates Christmas. It's just completely insane to me. All right. I'm not even sure if that's going to be a segment, but these people are just... this is why I can't cover conservatives. 'Cause, like, what do I say to this? The most I could do are like minute videos, because it all just writes itself. Like, just read that, and it should just explain it. What else can I really add? Is it breakdown time? I think it's breakdown time. I think it's time to break it down. Which also means I got a lot of, well, not a lot, but several links to pull up. Or maybe I'll just do it as I go. That way I don't have to, yeah, maybe I'll just do that. All right, there's a lot. Oh, everything disappeared. There we go. There's a lot in my breakdown. Before I get there, let me just see if there's any more anything in the chat I should respond to. Any messages, any super chats. But I'll get to most of those at the end. Oh, that was weird. All right. No, I think I'm caught up. All right. 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 Let's get to this breakdown. So last night was the December Democratic debate, and I thought it was great. Now, I'm going to break it down in many ways. I'm going to go through each of the candidates, give my thoughts, and I'm also going to show you at the end who had the most speaking time. And you may be pleasantly surprised at the result. So first, the beginning of this debate. I was kind of worried. So like maybe the first half of this debate, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders they hadn't brought it yet. They weren't going after anybody. Sure, their answers were, as solid as they normally are, especially Bernie Sanders. But I had tweeted about halfway through this debate that Sanders and Warren, they should be attacking other people. If they actually attacked other candidates on stage, they could snuff out all these candidates. And as I tweeted that, Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg began to have their little debate, which I'm going to show a piece of actually in a different video. But that's kind of where it all started. So before I get to the breakdown of the candidates here, I was also impressed by the questions that were asked. Out of all the debates, they actually, for the most part, asked great questions that were actually substantive, except for the one question about would you give it. There was some weird question about would you give a gift or would you or like who would you give a gift to on stage and what would the gift be? Or instead of doing that, I forget the wording, but it was basically like what would you apologize for? Like something like that. It was just a completely out of left field question. After they had all these fantastic questions, I don't know where the hell that one came from. But apart from that, I don't want to harp too much on it because it was one moment. It was great. So they had, multiple questions on the same topic. I thought it was structured well. So what they would do is they would have, say the section about climate change. They would ask a question about climate change in one way to the first candidate and maybe the second candidate, and then change it up for the next few questions. But it was all about climate change. So they were presenting new facts, new information in each of the questions as they were doing it. So it allowed them to ask multiple questions on climate change. There was also an ongoing discussion about campaign finance, which hasn't happened in any other debate. There's also a question to Bernie about Israel, which again doesn't really come up. Usually he has to bring these issues up. So fantastic when it comes to the questions. Let's get to the candidates now, including some examples. I'm going to sit over here on this side of the screen, and we're going to go through some examples. So first up, Andrew Yang. So before I even really get into all the candidates, I think everybody here had a great night, except for Pete Buttigieg. So, in fact, you could almost say everybody here had their best night out of any debate, except for Pete Buttigieg. We'll get to Buttigieg. So first, I want to show you why I think Andrew Yang had a solid performance. Let me start with this example clip here.
GDP and corporate profits are at record highs in America today. Also at record highs, depression, financial insecurity, student loan debt, even suicides and drug overdoses. It has gotten so bad that our life expectancy as a country has declined for the last 3 years because suicides and drug overdoses have overtaken vehicle deaths for the first time in American history. The fact is, this unemployment rate and GDP have very little relationship with people's lived experience on the ground. If you're a recent college graduate, you have a 40% chance of doing a job that doesn't require a college degree. That doesn't show up in the headline unemployment rate, nor does all of the families that are working 2 or 3 jobs to get by.
So there you go. That's a great moment there for Andrew Yang, breaking it down how, the way we normally dictate how well the country's doing is by looking at something like, GDP. People aren't feeling it. So you have to look at, wages, you have to look at student debt, you have to look at people's personal debt. Like, there are so many factors that go into living conditions, housing, so many things that go into how people, actually live, the material differences in their lives, if they're feeling any. And so Trump, discussing how great the economy is doing, maybe it's doing great for rich people. It's not doing great for everybody else. So I think Andrew Yang broke that down well. I also liked near the beginning of the debate where they were all asked about Donald Trump. Andrew Yang discussed how Trump, is a horrible president, but he isn't the source of the issue. How he's sort of, he didn't say symptom, but basically Andrew Yang went on to describe how Trump is a symptom of the problem. So he was able to kind of identify that well. And I also want to share this clip. So this was kind of I thought this was a weird moment for Yang because a lot of his support, like not all of his support, but a lot of his support are kind of like sort of quasi-libertarian Joe Rogan, dude bro kind of people. So this moment here, I'm actually curious how this will play with his base.
So-called dreamers in the state of California, more than any other state, including several students right here at LMU. If you win and you reinstate DACA through executive action, another president could just overturn it again. So will you move on a permanent legislative fix for dreamers in your first 100 days if elected?
Of course I would. I'm the son of immigrants myself, and I know that dreamers are essentially Americans in everything but this legal classification. I just want to return to this conversation because I think it's core. Our country is deeply misogynist, and most all of us know that. Money and men are tied together. That's where I thought Elizabeth was taking the conversation. The fact is, strong societies would elect more female leaders. Strong men treat women well for the same reasons. I'm on the record saying that you need both strong men and female leaders in government because the fact is, if you get too many men alone and leave us alone for a while, we kind of become morons.
So here's the thing. I don't really disagree with him. But I wonder how well that plays to his base who, again, libertarians are largely male, not all of them, but largely male. Joe Rogan's audience, he's been on Joe Rogan at least once, maybe twice. He definitely has some of that support as well. So I'm curious, him playing to this kind of line, or him saying this, I wonder how this plays to his base. I guess it kind of remains to be seen. But overall, I thought Yang did well. That said, he's not going to win this race. He doesn't have the movement. He doesn't have the support base. He doesn't have the donor base in terms of, individual or wealthy. He has a bit of both, but it's not enough to really, take him far into this. He doesn't appear to be growing all that much. That said, the debate alone, he did well. Pete Buttigieg, I don't have any examples, so I'm going to Pete Buttigieg next. I don't have any examples of Pete Buttigieg because he'll be in my other examples from other candidates. But this was his worst performance. He was attacked from all sides. Amy Klobuchar attacked him on lack of experience, which it's a clip I'll get to. Warren and Sanders attacked him on meeting with wealthy donors. Even Andrew Yang got a dig in at Pete Buttigieg by mentioning the wine cave thing. So they all, almost all of them, except for maybe Steyer, though I'm not even sure, maybe Steyer got a jab as well. They all kind of took shots at Pete Buttigieg, and it was fantastic. So there really appears to be this treatment of Buttigieg by the other candidates, almost like, why are you here? Like, they're looking at him like, all of us up here are incredibly accomplished in what we do. Andrew Yang, even though he's not in politics, he's accomplished in what he does. Buttigieg, you are a mayor? Got, 11,000 votes or something? He lost a statewide race. He lost the race for DNC chair. It just appears he's trying to further his career. And I think people are really getting that feeling as well. I saw a piece of a focus group from the LA Times, and Buttigieg came up, and people were saying, yeah, he just appears to be, really kind of poll tested. He doesn't actually appear to actually, care about any of these issues. He just appears to be furthering his resume as a way to get in the White House and prop himself up. So while Pete Buttigieg has seen sort of a rise, I actually think if enough people watch this debate, it's going to hurt him because he did not perform well and he was attacked from all sides. Joe Biden, I don't have any clips either for Joe Biden because it's hard to explain Joe Biden. Joe Biden leading in polls, though he continues to drop as Bernie begins to or continues to rise. But Joe Biden in this debate, he didn't have any serious brain farts. So honestly, this was probably his best debate performance. Just because Joe Biden, he didn't go off on any weird tangents. He didn't really say anything too crazy this was a debate where I think he was kind of saved by the fact that, as I'm going to get to later, he wasn't given all that much time. So compared to the other candidates on stage, this time Joe Biden was not the one who was speaking the most or even in the top three. So that kind of saved him. Him speaking less helps him because as you're seeing in the early states, because people are seeing him more in, states like Iowa, New Hampshire, he's not doing too well in those states. I mean, in Iowa, where you would think, oh, isn't Joe Biden, doesn't he come off as like a working class dude? Iowa does not like Joe Biden because they are seeing a lot of him and they see him and realize, oh, yeah, this is not the guy I thought maybe he was. So Joe Biden, even though he's still leading in polls, it's weak support. When you look at polling, people that actually, I'll get to this in my poll breakdown every week on this live stream. I do a poll breakdown. Morning Consult poll shows the people that support Biden, their second choice is Bernie Sanders. And Joe Biden's support base is not as solid as Bernie's support base is. So a lot of Biden's support can be peeled off by Bernie Sanders or other candidates. So, I mean, I think once Biden loses a few of the first states, maybe even just loses Iowa, his support's going to drop. I think that's what it's going to take for people to really wake up and be like, okay, Biden's not going to win this. Who do I support now? So I'm not sure how much this debate's going to have an impact on polling, but him losing early states definitely will impact him. Amy Klobuchar, I shockingly have a clip for Amy Klobuchar, as you're going to see. Because, okay, look, I don't want Amy Klobuchar to win. I'm amazed she's even still in this race. But this was her best performance. And it's because she went on the offense against people that she should be going after because she can get their support. She went after Pete Buttigieg. She is aware enough to understand. Klobuchar knows she can't peel off Warren supporters, really. I mean, maybe a bit for some of those identity-obsessed supporters. But in terms of policy issues, she can't peel off Warren supporters. She definitely can't peel off Sanders supporters. So where does she go? She goes after Pete Buttigieg, somebody who is rising in the early states and definitely has weak support. People that can be pulled off from Pete Buttigieg potentially to Amy Klobuchar. So let me show a bit of what Amy Klobuchar had to offer in this debate.
When we were in the last debate, Mayor, you basically mocked the 100 years of experience on the stage. And what do I see on this stage? I see Elizabeth's work starting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and helping 29 million people. I see the Vice President's work in getting $2 billion for his cancer moonshot. I see Senator Sanders' work of working to get the veterans bill passed across the aisle. And I see what I've done, which is to negotiate 3 farm bills and be someone that actually had major provisions put in those bills. So while you can dismiss committee hearings, I think this experience works. And I have not denigrated your experience as a local official. I have been one. I just think you should respect our experience when you look at how you evaluate someone who can get things done.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Mayor, I'll give you a chance to respond.
You actually did denigrate my experience, Senator, and it was before the break, and I was going to let it go because we got bigger fish to fry here. But You
Oh,
implied
I don't
that my
think we have
relation-
bigger fish to fry than picking a president of the United States.
You're right. And before the break, you seemed to imply that my relationship to the First Amendment was a talking point, as if anyone up here has any more or less commitment to the Constitution than anybody else up here. Let me tell you about...
I just got to pause for a minute. People aren't buying this. This is typical politician BS. This is a moment where Amy Klobuchar is actually real, and Pete Buttigieg here is the establishment BSer. His BS is, I don't think, is working on people. But let me continue this.
my relationship to the First Amendment. It is part of the Constitution that I raised my right hand and swore to defend with my life. That is my experience, and it may not be the same as yours, but it counts, Senator. It counts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Senator Klobuchar, you have 45 seconds to respond.
I certainly respect
What a loser.
your military experience. That's not what this is about. This is
Exactly.
about choosing a president. And I know my view of this is I know you ran to be chair of the Democratic National Committee. That's not something that I wanted to do. I want to be president of the United States. And the point is, we should have someone heading up this ticket that has actually won and been able to show that they can gather the support that you talk about of moderate Republicans and independents, as well as a fired up Democratic base. And not just done it once, I have done it 3 times. I think winning matters. I think a track record of getting things done matters. And I also think showing our party that we can actually bring people with us, have a wider tent, have a bigger coalition, and yes, longer coattails, that matters.
Thank you, Senator. Dinesh.
I got to respond to that. Senator, I know that if you just go by vote totals, maybe what goes on in my city seems small to you. If you want to talk about the capacity to win, try putting together a coalition to bring you back to office with 80% of the vote as a gay dude in Mike Pence's Indiana.
15 seconds. Again, I would, Mayor, if you had won in Indiana, that would be one thing. You tried and you lost by 20 points.
Let's talk about
how
Look, you gotta give credit where it's due. That was great. Amy Klobuchar, look, you haven't won me over as a candidate, but you won me over in that moment. Pete Buttigieg needed that. And Amy Klobuchar was the one to bring it. In addition to, Elizabeth Warren brought it as well. Another piece I'll get to. But that just shows you how beaten down Buttigieg was by both Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren during this debate. I love that moment. So I thought she did well. She even defended Bernie Sanders in that clip. I mean, talking about his accomplishments. So look, credit where it's due. You're going to compliment the candidate I support. I'm going to like you a little more than usual. So good job there, Amy Klobuchar. All right, on Tom Steyer. I don't have a clip on Tom Steyer because Tom Steyer. But here's the issue with Tom Steyer. Like, nothing he says is really wrong, but it's almost like, why are you in this debate? At times, it sounds like he's just trying to parrot Bernie Sanders. And it's like, dude, you're a billionaire and you just bought your way on stage. And I get it. Maybe you have some good positions on climate. Maybe you're talking the right game when it comes to corporate donations or whatever. But you're not the right person for this message. And for him to waste $80 million on TV ads in a week on himself. He wasted $80 million. Bloomberg wasted $100 million on himself. Steyer wasting $80 million instead of putting that money into, I don't know, state races, nonprofits, like anywhere else except for yourself and your vanity project. The money could have been put to much better use. But like, that's my issue with him. He doesn't need to be in this race. The issues that he's trying to represent are already being represented by other people on stage. There is no reason at all for Tom Steyer to be in this race. That said, he did okay, I guess, but he's largely forgettable for me. Elizabeth Warren. All right. I thought Elizabeth Warren had a pretty good night. Let me show you a clip here. I'm also going to have a separate segment on her on her back and forth with Buttigieg. So I'm not going to show that here, but I do want to show. I like this. She was comfortable on stage. She presented well. Let me play this piece.
Senator Warren, you would be the oldest president ever inaugurated. I'd like you to weigh in as well.
I'd also be the youngest woman ever inaugurated. I believe that President Obama was talking about who has power in America, whose voices get heard. I believe he's talking about women and people of color and trans people and people whose voices just so often get shoved out. And for me, the best way to understand that is look at how people are running their campaigns in 2020. You know, I made the decision when I decided to run not to do business as usual. And now I'm crowding in on 100,000 selfies. That's 100,000 hugs and handshakes and stories.
Okay. That's kind of Elizabeth Warren's performance in a nutshell. Has some good moments. I like that little quip there about how she'd be the youngest female president ever. But then she goes on about her selfies. I mean, there was like a debate between Warren and Biden at one point about who took more selfies. It was stupid. Like this, if they think that's what wins young voters over, they're completely clueless. It's your dedication to helping people. That's what wins young people over. This competition over selfies ain't going to do it. So while Elizabeth Warren had strong moments, there were moments like the selfies. She brought up the selfies way too much. That kind of hurt her for me. That said, overall, she did well. But we're getting down in the numbers here. And when there's someone else on stage that represents your ideas better, I shouldn't say your ideas, that represents, like she is trying to represent Bernie's ideas. Bernie just has more history with the platform, has a different platform, a better platform. His foreign policy alone, completely different than Elizabeth Warren, much more progressive, much more humanitarian. Bernie Sanders actually willing to, discuss issues like how Palestinians are people. Like, he's willing to go there on those foreign policy issues. Elizabeth Warren doesn't even touch them. And also, issues like Medicare for all, Bernie's Medicare for all roll-up plan is much better. Elizabeth Warren has this dumb, two-staged plan where she somehow thinks she's going to pass Medicare for all in her third year, right before re-election. Like, you can't have two healthcare fights. She thinks she's going to pass one bill that is a public option at first and then pass Medicare for all later. You don't give private insurance companies 3 years to ramp up their fight against Medicare for all. You just don't do that. So her plan on Medicare for all is horrible. Bernie has, a canceling all student debt plan. All student debt, Elizabeth Warren's is means tested, in addition to the free college issue. So, yeah, we're getting down to the numbers now. And at some point, I think Elizabeth Warren has to drop out and back Bernie Sanders. He's just a better vessel, and he's built the movement. Like, it'd be one thing if there were these policy differences, but she had the movement behind her. Bernie Sanders has the movement behind him. He has by far the most individual donors, the most donations, the most volunteers, the most grassroots support by far. He has huge progressive groups like CPD Action that represent 600,000 families backing his campaign. It's going to get, if she stays until Iowa, which I'm sure she will, but after, some of the early states, if she doesn't win any of them and Bernie wins them, at that point, I think she has to drop out and back Bernie. But we're going to see where that all goes. The debate, though, she did fairly well. Oh, also, I want to mention briefly that, since I'm not going to mention it here in this video, the wine cellar thing, or the what is it? The wine cave. So Elizabeth Warren brought up how Pete Buttigieg met with wealthy donors in this wine cave. You see him right here. Yeah. $900 bottle of wine. So that's who Pete Buttigieg has face-to-face time with. And I'm glad that Elizabeth Warren brought this up, as again, you will see in a separate video. All right, the next person. Who am I missing in this discussion? Oh, yeah. Bernie Sanders. So Bernie, I thought, started off kind of shaky, to be quite honest with you. Like that moment when the moderator cut him off and was like, Sanders, this question's about race. And he was getting to that. Like, this is the issue as well with the moderator in this moment. If you don't understand as a moderator that race and climate are intertwined, like, what the hell are you doing? So she butts in to Bernie. In that moment, it did make Bernie look bad, but he was getting to climate. Or, I mean, he was getting to race. Like, he was connecting the two together. So he was actually on the correct side of the issue. But like, when that happened, I thought, this debate's they're not gonna report on it well in terms of how he comes off. But then the last half of the debate, I thought it was fantastic. Nails Joe Biden and Buttigieg on their billionaire donors. I covered this in a previous video, but since this clip is quick, let me just show it again, since this is very satisfying to watch.
Senator Sanders, I am rather proud, maybe, I don't know, the only candidate up here doesn't have any billionaire contributions. But you know what I do have? We have received more contributions from more individuals than any candidate in the history of the United States of America at this point in an election, averaging $18 apiece. Now, there's a real competition going on up here. My good friend Joe, and he is a good friend, he's received contributions from 44 billionaires. Pete, on the other hand, is trailing. Pete, you only got 39 billionaires contributing. So, Pete, we look forward to you. I know you're an energetic guy and a competitive guy, to see if you can take on Joe on that issue. But what is not a laughing matter, my friends. This is why 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half. This is why Amazon and other major corporations pay 0 in federal taxes. We need to get money out of politics. We should run our campaigns on that basis.
Thank you, Senator.
So, yeah, I don't want to get too into this clip because I covered it in another video. But basically, the way he brings it out there is perfect. He discusses how many, he has the most donations by far, individual donations by far out of anybody in the race. I mean, grassroots support is what is driving Bernie Sanders. Then he brings in how, Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg have, all these billionaire donors. That's who's backing them. And then he connects it to policy by discussing this corruption is why Amazon pays 0 in taxes. Brilliant. That's how you do it. So this is maybe Bernie's best minute in any debate so far, because he's able to connect everything together. His movement, the other candidates and their issues, and then policy, how that affects policy. So good. That was easily the best moment in the debate, as I discussed in my video on that. So go watch that video for more. There was also a back and forth with Klobuchar, a brief back and forth with Klobuchar that I actually enjoyed, where Klobuchar or Bernie brings up how, I'm not yelling at you. I'm angry at the corrupting influence that money has on politics, be it corporations, wealthy donors. So he kind of recenters the conversation, recenters his anger at what the actual issue is, which, a lot of people, voters, unfortunately, they're bothered by the bickering back and forth, even though I think it's good to do that. But by Bernie being able to connect his anger to people that aren't on stage, not necessarily at, the other politicians, even though that's also part of it, but by connecting his anger to, the forces that are actually driving a lot of this, I think that works on a lot of voters that may not be for Bernie yet, but I think that will help connect with him. He also had this moment that I think is also effective for people that may not yet be Bernie supporters, where he talks about, he briefly mentions it, but this definitely works. This idea that people have to fill out all these forms because of the means testing of these programs. Watch.
I believe in the concept of universality. And one of the crises in America today is people are sick and tired of filling out forms. So you're not eligible for the program today because you're at 150, but you lost your job, are you eligible? You get a better job, you're eligible. I think what we have to do is what we do with Social Security, what we do with public education. Donald Trump's kids can go to a public school. They should be able to go to a public school. What we need right now is a revolution in education. We have got to end this dysfunctional child care system and make sure that every working class person in this country can find high quality, affordable child care. We need to make public colleges and universities tuition-free, and by taxing billionaires and by taxing Wall Street, we will cancel all student debt in this country.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Like, even just so, not even just the end part, when it comes to canceling student debt and public free or free public college, but as I said, the part about forms, like that, people are able to connect their lives to that when they hear, yeah, I hate filling out all these forms, be it, I don't know, healthcare, education, any programs where you have to apply to get the benefits. It's all BS. If it was just universal and you already had it, it'd be so much easier, less to worry about. It frees your life up, frees your time up. Like, that's a huge benefit of a single payer system that never gets discussed. I live under a single payer system. I don't know if I've ever filled out a form about healthcare. I mean, I had surgery once. It was minor surgery. I think there was like a one-page form for that, just to kind of like basic information. But that's it. Like, that's one of the huge benefits of universal programs. Because it's universal, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to in any way try to apply for whatever it is, because you have it. It's guaranteed to you. It's universal. So if he's able to discuss universal programs in this way more consistently, I think it'll help connect to a lot of voters that generally have been turned off by his message or haven't really got it until he puts it in these terms. So I'm glad that he brought that into the discussion. I also want to share this clip, since I thought this was a great question by the moderator. I think this clip has the question as well. I hope so. This is like, people, will say, "Oh, David, you're biased. You like Bernie so much." Sure, I like, my bias is towards progressive policy. But if you have a solid question, like a good, hard question for Bernie Sanders, I'm not going to be angry at you over it. This is a good, hard question for Bernie Sanders, and I like the way he answered it. Watch.
Senator Sanders, you do often point to your vote against the war in Iraq as evidence of your judgment on foreign policy, but you did vote for the war in Afghanistan, and as recently as 2015, you said you supported a continued U.S. troop presence there. Was that support a mistake?
Well, only one person, my good friend Barbara Lee, was right on that issue. She was the only person in the House to vote against the war in Afghanistan. She was right. I was wrong. So was everybody else in the House. But to answer your question, I don't think you do what Trump does and make foreign policy decisions based on a tweet at 3 a.m. in the morning, or desert your longtime allies like the Kurds. I think you work with the international community. You remove all troops over a period of time, a short period of time, within 1 year.
Thank you, Senator.
So that was the question from the moderator asking about his vote for the war in Afghanistan. Great question. That's a great question. And I think he answered it well there, giving Barbara Lee credit for being the only vote that voted against it. So, like, Barbara Lee does not get enough credit for doing that, for being on the correct side of that issue. And look, Barbara Lee had initially endorsed Kamala Harris. I don't think she's endorsed anybody yet, but I do hope she backs Bernie Sanders. I think Barbara Lee is solid on many issues and clearly, stood against everybody else on her vote against that war and has been proven correct. So she deserves serious credit for that. Now, so as you can tell, I think Bernie won the debate. I think it was clear. But everybody did pretty well in the debate. But let me show you the speaking time, because this is a little shocking, to say the least. Look who had the most speaking time for once. So Sanders has never had the most speaking time in any debate. I don't think, honestly, he's even made top 3 in speaking time in any debate so far. Every time the totals come out for these debates, he's usually 4th, sometimes even lower on the list. Here, he actually had the most speaking time. So credit to PBS, who, a couple weeks ago did an 8-minute segment breaking down the 2020 race. Didn't mention Bernie Sanders once. Maybe they saw my criticisms, or maybe not. But here they gave Bernie Sanders or I should say, I guess, allowed him to speak for the most amount of time. Klobuchar, again, given way too much speaking time. She should not be second here. And based in polling, she's, I think, like second or third last on this list. But up here in speaking time, absurd. Elizabeth Warren, good position for her. Buttigieg, fourth, I guess makes sense for him. Biden, so this is actually bad. I think I talked about this a bit earlier. Joe Biden, because he didn't speak a lot, he appeared to perform well because there was less time for him to screw up. So I actually, in these debates, you want Biden to be speaking more often, because if he's up here with Bernie Sanders, then that means there's more opportunity for Joe Biden to say something dumb, which he usually does. So I think the only reason he was able to get out of this debate without saying anything completely stupid, without having a brain fart, is because he didn't speak all that much. Andrew Yang at the bottom again. He should be above Steyer here, but that's maybe just my personal feelings. But I think Andrew Yang was able to utilize the time he had and did a lot with it. So this list isn't everything. All right, that's the breakdown. So let's get a little deeper on one issue before I do that. Actually, I heard some super chats. Maybe there were some related to the debate, so let me get to those first. I also maybe got to blow my nose. Since I have a cold and I'm trying to speak through it, and it can be tough at times. Jay Rude says, thanks, David, for all your work. I have to go to South Bend for work Monday, home of Medicare for all who want it. Awesome. Thank you, Jay Rude, for your super chat. Magnus Storm says, as a Norwegian, I'm unable to donate to Bernie, so I'm going to donate to this dude in Canada talking true-ish on YouTube instead. I love it. Thank you, Magnus. Much appreciated. 200 kroner. I'm not sure how much money that is. Maybe it's a lot. Maybe it's a normal donation. But thank you so much. And Beefy Weefy says, love your work. Keep it up. And sends me $20 in New Zealand money. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. I think I just heard one more super chat, so let me get to it before I move on. Indeed. Louis Denoya says, thank you for all you do. Thank you. Thank you for your super chat. All right. Let me get to a little deeper into this debate by prepping the next story. Man, the chat is wild right now. I just got a peek. It's going crazy. All right. I like this moment between Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg. I enjoyed this a lot. The debate really picked up in the second half. At least that's what I noticed. That's when all the fun happened. All right.
When you have rational national priorities.
During the December Democratic debate, Elizabeth Warren went after Pete Buttigieg on campaign finance. This is one of the top moments of the debate. Let me show you this.
The mayor just recently had a fundraiser that was held in a wine cave full of crystals and served $900 a bottle wine. Think about who comes to that. He had promised that every fundraiser he would do would be open door, but this one was closed door. We made the decision many years ago that rich people in smoke-filled rooms would not pick the next president of the United States. Billionaires in wine caves should not pick the next president of the United States.
Mr. Mayor, your response.
You know, according to Forbes magazine, I am literally the only person on this stage who's not a millionaire or a billionaire. So if this is important, this is the problem.
Let me just stop him there. It's not important. That has nothing to do with anything. In fact, let me show you, since Natalie Sher broke it down well here. To be clear, Pete Buttigieg has less money because he's 37, not because he hasn't structured every second of his career around getting powerful and connected enough to finally leave politics and cash in. That's it. This idea that, oh, Elizabeth Warren, you have $1 million, or Bernie Sanders, you have $1 million, so that must mean you're fighting for wealthy and corporations. No, it obviously doesn't. Look at who's behind them. Look at how Bernie's raising his money. Look at what he's fighting for. Look at his 40-year record. It's about who they are actually meeting with, if they're meeting with anybody. Bernie Sanders is not meeting face-to-face with wealthy donors. Bernie Sanders is not having private fundraisers. Neither is Elizabeth Warren, at least not in the primary. She said she'd be more open to it in the general. But right now, Pete Buttigieg meeting face-to-face with wealthy donors in a wine cave is going to have more of an impact on what he's going to do than Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren having $1 million. Like, it's about who you meet with. You're impacted by your environment. It's human nature. So because Bernie Sanders understands that, he doesn't have those meetings because he understands people are victims to their nature. If you're surrounding yourselves with wealthy individuals, with CEOs, with executives, you're going to take on their worldview, whether you like it or not. Pete Buttigieg is taking on that worldview. I mean, you can go back and read his essay when he was 18 about how awesome Bernie Sanders is. He wrote that essay in the year 2000. Bernie Sanders is incredible. He's like the one clear voice in Washington. Now look at him, meeting with wealthy donors in a wine cave. Like, that's what matters here. Let me continue this.
Problem with issuing purity tests you cannot yourself pass. If I pledged never to be in the company of a progressive Democratic donor, I couldn't be up here. Senator, your net worth is 100 times mine. Now, supposing that you went home feeling the holiday spirit, I know this isn't likely, but stay with me, and decided to go on to PeteForAmerica.com and give the maximum allowable by law, $2,800. Would that pollute my campaign because it came from a wealthy person? No, I would be glad to have that support. We need the support from everybody who is committed to helping us defeat Donald Trump.
I'd like to give you a chance to respond.
I do not sell access to my time. I don't do call time with millionaires and billionaires.
Sorry, as of when, Senator?
I don't meet behind closed doors with big dollar donors. And look, I've taken one that ought to be an easy step for everyone here. I've said to anyone who wants to donate to me, if you want to donate to me, that's fine. But don't come around later expecting to be named ambassador, because that's what goes on in these high dollar fundraisers. I said no, and I asked everybody on this stage to join me. This ought to be an easy step. And here's the problem. If you can't stand up and take the steps that are relatively easy, can't stand up to the wealthy and well-connected when it's relatively easy when you're a candidate, then how can the American people believe you're going to stand up to the wealthy and well-connected when you're president and it's really hard?
Judy.
Senator.
Yeah, that's it. We don't need to hear Pete Buttigieg anymore. I mean, he's completely full of crap. You can just tell, apart from this exchange, his plans, Medicare for all who want it, it's a public option. And he is purposely lying to people about what it is. A public option does not operate the same way as Medicare for all. It's not Medicare for all who want it because it wouldn't be Medicare for all. Medicare for all is a single payer system. Everybody being on the same plan means you have free choice of doctor, free choice of a provider. You have complete free choice. You have freedom. You don't have to apply to the public option. You don't have to apply to anything. It is not Medicare for all is Medicare for all. It is not a public option. So Pete Buttigieg there being completely disingenuous about his healthcare plan. And then he has, the Douglas plan for Black America, where he lies about the support in South Carolina that supports his Douglas plan for Black America. The top 3 people that the Buttigieg campaign put out there as like, these are the 3 important people in South Carolina that support Pete Buttigieg's plan for his Douglas plan for Black America. None of them support it. One of them is actually a Bernie Sanders chair. The other 2 were like, we talked to him about it, but no, we didn't endorse his plan. What the campaign did is they sent out emails that said, opt out by 4 p.m. or you have endorsed this plan. So they were automatic endorsements. You had to actually email the campaign back and say, no, I do not endorse this plan for you to not be an endorser. Who does this? And he has never been called on that in any debate or any discussion on television that I've seen. It's crazy. So, like, he is so disingenuous. And both Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren, I think, and Bernie Sanders exposed that during this debate. And I hope if enough people watch this debate that it's going to hurt him, because he just came off looking completely horrible. And I just want to show you that wine cave that they were talking about. This is that wine cave. Here's the crystals, full of crystals. Look at this ridiculous thing. This is what the wealthy do to buy politicians. Look at that. And here's Buttigieg right here in the center as, the main guy, listening to all the problems of the wealthy. Get out of here. All right. That's that. I have another debate-related thing coming up, but let me do something else first. A former healthcare executive spilled the beans on how the industry puts out misinformation about Medicare for All. So this is going to be, I'm going to show you a Twitter thread here. Wendell Potter is the guy. He is a former VP of Cigna, an insurance company. And he put out this thread breaking down exactly how they have, when he was back doing that work, how they created this narrative about choice when it came to healthcare and pushing back against Medicare for All. So look at this. So Potter tweets out, lately I've noticed some Democratic politicians defending the current healthcare system by saying it preserves choice for Americans. As a former health insurance executive who helped draft this talking point, I need to come clean on its backstory and why it's wrong and a trap. When I worked in the insurance industry, we were instructed to talk about choice based on focus groups and people like Frank Luntz, who wrote the book on how the GOP should communicate with Americans. I used it all the time as an industry flack. Let me just zoom in here. Industry flack. But there was a problem. As a health insurance PR guy, we knew one of the huge vulnerabilities of the current system was lack of choice. In the current system, you can't pick your own doctor, specialist, or hospital without huge out-of-network bills. So we set out to muddy the issue of choice. As industry insiders, we knew most Americans have very little choice of their plan. Your company chooses an insurance provider, and you get to pick from a few different plans offered by that one insurer, usually either a high deductible plan or a highly deductible plan. Another problem insurers like mine had on the choice issue, people with employer-based plans have very little choice to keep it. You can lose it if your company changes it, or you change jobs, or turn 26, or many other ways. This is a problem for defenders of the status quo. Knowing we were losing the choice argument, my pals in the insurance industry spent millions on lobbying, ads, and spin doctors, all designed to gaslight Americans into thinking that reforming the status quo would somehow give them less choice. an industry front group launched a campaign to achieve this very purpose. Its name, My Care, My Choice. Its job, trick Americans into thinking they currently can choose any plan they want, and that their plan allows them to see any doctor. They've spent big in Iowa. So here's an example of one of those ads. This is actually something you should send around to your friends and family, especially, your parents, grandparents who are on Facebook. They may see ads like this and be anti-Medicare for all because of it. Inform them on how this was completely concocted behind the scenes to misinform people. He goes on, this isn't the only time the industry made choice a big talking point in its scheme to fight health reform. Soon after Obamacare was passed, it created a front group called the Choice and Competition Coalition to scare states away from creating exchanges with better plans. The difference is, this time, Democrats are the ones parroting the misleading choice talking point, and they're even using it as a weapon against each other. Back in my insurance PR days, this would have stunned me. I bet my old colleagues are thrilled and celebrating. The truth, of course, is you have little choice in healthcare now. Most can't keep their plan as long as they want or visit any doctor or hospital. Some reforms, like Medicare for All, would let you. In other words, Medicare for All actually offers more choice than the status quo. So if a politician tells you they oppose reforming the current healthcare system because they want to preserve choice, either they don't know what they're talking about or they're willfully ignoring the truth. I assure you, the insurance industry is delighted either way. This is how people are being manipulated. So, look, I mention this a lot because not everybody sees all my videos, but I live in Canada. I live under a single payer system. It's fantastic. I never think about healthcare until I need it. So when I need it, say I wake up, I don't feel well, I call my doctor, I make a same day appointment, I see my doctor that day. If she's not available or whatever, I can go to any walk-in clinic. Again, we're on a single payer system. I can go anywhere. Go to any walk-in clinic, see any doctor in that walk-in clinic, get a checkup, get prescribed something, leave. That's it. No paperwork, nothing. I just have a health card. Walk in, here's my health card. They know who I am. Get health care, leave. And I had surgery once. Again, maybe one piece of paperwork for that. It's scheduled ahead of time. I go on surgery day, get my surgery, come home. That's it. There's nothing else. No talking to insurance companies. No, there is so much time saved. I think that's what really needs to be communicated more often. That because healthcare would be universal and guaranteed to you, you don't have to think about it. It's a lot off your back, not just in terms of money, because you will be saving money. No out-of-pocket expenses, nothing. You'll be saving a ton of money. The only people paying more under a Medicare for All system are the extreme wealthy, people that can't afford to pay more. Everybody else paying way less under a universal system. So you don't just save money, you save time. It's freedom. Freedom of doctor, true freedom of doctor, freedom of provider, freedom of just complete freedom when it comes to healthcare. And freedom from your employer. Say you're in a job that you don't like, but you have great health insurance, so you don't want to leave that job. Well, under a universal system, under a single payer Medicare for All system, now you can. You can leave that job, maybe start a business, maybe hire people, and they have healthcare now already guaranteed to them through the existing single payer system. You don't have to guarantee it to them. They already have it. Endless benefits. You can go back to school. Say, hey, I don't like what I'm doing. I want to learn, more about whatever. Leave your job, go back to school. You still have healthcare. You and your family all have healthcare. I don't even know. Americans, a lot of you that watch my channel generally already know this. But that's why it's important to share this stuff around. Share these videos around to people who don't know this, who have just been misinformed by these industry talking points, by people that are looking to continue to make lots of money for themselves. That is there is no actual argument against a single payer system. All the arguments are manufactured in, dark rooms like Wendell Potter describes here, all ways to try and misinform people and pretend that, in fact, no, there is choice. There's definitely choice when there isn't. All right. I feel like I should do a weekly healthcare thing because really, there needs to be just a complete mental shift in terms of how healthcare is approached. and how it's looked at in America. All right, I heard some more super chats. Let me get to some of those before I get to my next story. Moonborn Unicorn says Biden mocked someone with a speech impediment. No, so yeah, that part is weird. I was like half listening. I was looking at my phone, looking at Twitter when Biden was talking. My understanding is, I know this. Biden had a speech impediment, or he stutters or whatever. That's what he was doing. So he wasn't mocking other people that have a speech impediment. He was kind of just talking about himself. I don't think that was anything to really, be bothered by. Chris sends a super chat, says, you and Dave Pakman are two of the only truth tellers out here, David. Keep it up. I love keeping up with your work. Thank you, Chris. Addy D says, ban Andrea Pexitoto in chat for anti-Semitism, please. I need moderators. I don't have easy access to ban people. But that's an interesting super chat. I've never been sent a super chat for what I'm trying to say here. Moderate or moderation purposes. But I'll look into that. I just can't. It's impossible to do that in the middle of this stream. G sends a super chat saying Pete pointed out her hypocrisy transferring $10 million. Yeah, so Elizabeth Warren did. She transferred $10 million from her former campaign, her Senate campaign, to her run for president. Look, yeah, she's not as clean as Bernie is, obviously, on this issue. That's why I support Bernie Sanders. So I don't know what you want me to add or add to that or say, but like she's still better than Buttigieg. So there's still varying degrees here, right? Like it's not just black and white. Like Bernie is clearly above everybody else on these issues. And then there's sort of a hierarchy in terms of who's above other people. So yeah, it is what it is. But like, because the debate at that time was between those two candidates, I'm more focused on Pete and his corruption as opposed to anybody else. Let me get some more here before I move on. Magnus Storm says, in Norway, healthcare covers breast reduction. Ha ha ha. Well, I imagine, look, if it's a health issue that's affecting your life, totally it's covered. Yeah. Same thing in Canada. If you need some kind of surgery that's, it may appear like it's cosmetic, but it actually, there's an actual reason why your life is being impeded by it, then yeah, it's covered. Mateus N says, a few candidates in the debate mentioned they are against expanding nuclear energy to replace coal. Are they actually taking climate change seriously? I don't have a fully formed opinion on nuclear. I also kind of feel the same way they do. Depending on the technology, right? Like there was a part of the debate where Yang was discussing a cleaner way of doing nuclear energy. This is stuff I'm not all that engaged in, so I don't want to speak on it too much. But there are experts. Like when it comes to candidates, you have to trust who's behind them. So based on Sanders and his record, I trust the people that he has behind him that are helping to form these policy positions. Like it's not just him writing out, it's not just Bernie Sanders going online and typing up his policy proposals. No, there are teams behind these candidates. So you have to look at their track record, where they are on these issues to really get a sense of where they would be as president on these various positions. Michael Zwagaft says, I'm a strong supporter of Medicare for all, but no one ever talks about how to dismantle the current system. Health insurance companies have billions in revenue and hundreds of thousands of employees. So there's a transition. Like yeah, every single detail isn't worked out because it can't be worked out. It happens in the moment. So it's always hilarious to me. Like, progressive policy has to be completely explained from top to bottom, every single detail. You know, oh, you want free college, free public college? How exactly are you going to do it? Medicare for all, how exactly? I need to know every single detail. But anything else, like increasing the military budget, just like, okay, do it. Like, tax cuts for the rich, yeah, do it, whatever. Like, there's no discussion about that. No discussion about how dismantling systems that are in place to fund various things, whether it's, infrastructure, public transit, school. Like, there's never a discussion when it comes to dismantling anything that actually helps people. But when it comes to having to offer systems or, policies, whatever it is to benefit people's lives, all of a sudden need to know every single detail. I'm not into that discussion. There are two bills on Medicare for all, one in the House, one in the Senate. The Senate one is over 4 years. The House one's over 2 years. That's Jayapal's bill. They both lay it out. And there's also I don't have it in front of me, but there's a university study on Bernie's Medicare for all bill in the Senate that explains more of the details, including, what happens with the employees and how they're taken care of, the employees of those insurance companies, and how a lot of them can be transferred over to the new system. And those that aren't can be taken care of like they are under the climate change plan that Bernie has. So a lot of the details there are being filled in, but it's not all going to be there even on day one, because it's a process that gets worked out. It's impossible for every single thing to be explained. All right. Let me hold it there as I go to the next piece. I may need to get some water in a bit because I'm running low, but I'll get there when I need to. All right. I'm going to get to a clip here from CNN. It's a little crazy. Following the December debate, CNN had a discussion with Elizabeth Warren about grassroots fundraising. And in this clip, it really appears that Van Jones claims that grassroots fundraising or swearing off face-to-face meetings with wealthy donors is elitist. Yes, that swearing off of that is elitist. Let me play the clip because it's a little insane.
How do you respond, though, when Pete says, you're a millionaire? You are a millionaire. Are you saying if I take money from you, I'm corrupt? I didn't hear you respond to that. Oh. If I run for office, which I never will, and I took money from you, would I be corrupt?
I said I don't sell access to my time.
So
whether you give me $5 or whatever is the maximum, I'm not spending my time doing call time. I'm not spending my time having private conversations with you.
Are you worried about this whole idea?
I'm not selling a photograph for $5,000.
Well said. But are you worried? When he says a thing, when he says the thing, purity tests, that resonates with me. Yeah. I do feel that there's something beginning to happen in the party where you've got to be pure on every issue. You've got to be above, and a lot of people start feeling left out and excluded by your kind of populism, which can sometimes sound elitist. Does that make sense to you?
That's not how I see it. I don't think the American people are looking for purity. I think they're looking for someone who's trying. And that's what I'm doing. I'm out there trying.
Let me just pause this for a second because there's, half the video to go. Absurd. How she describes, meeting with wealthy donors face to face, it's a problem. That's why I'm, relying on grassroots fundraising. And then Van Jones, isn't it elitist? Isn't your purity test, what if I want to give you money? Isn't it elitist that you don't want to meet with wealthy donors? Now, he doesn't say that. He doesn't repeat her directly, but he follows he says this elitist comment following her comments about not meeting face to face with wealthy donors. Like, I don't know what happened to Van Jones because he was not this person. He used to be, a fairly left-wing progressive guy. And I kind of know what happened. He's on CNN now. These are the bubbles they operate in. They begin to make lots of money. And all of a sudden their worldview changes. This is what happens to not just politicians, but people in journalism or people on television. They get into these Washington circles and they take on this, this mindset that exists there where, oh, we're awesome. The way we think is the correct way to think, and you're wrong if you question any of this. It's crazy. But let me finish this clip.
I've said I'm going to run a campaign from grassroots donations. I suppose at that point I'm supposed to say, please go to ElizabethWarren.com and pitch in $5 if you think that's how a campaign should run. I do call time. Do you know who I called in my last call time? A couple of people who gave $5 each, somebody who gave $20. Because,
Senator, you didn't answer Chris's question, which is, for 6 years you did raise money that way. Did you feel corrupted by the money you were raising?
Look, I saw what it is that people expect in return, and I also understand.
But you didn't give it.
I understand that the American people who watch this government work better and better and better for giant corporations and for rich people, want to hear someone who credibly can say, I will take on the billionaires, I will fight to beat back the influence of money in Washington. I'm building a grassroots movement, and you know what the number one thing we start with is? It's anti-corruption. I have the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate, and it's about campaign contributions and so much more.
Okay. I don't love her answer here. She could have just straight up admitted, yeah, when I began to hang around with some wealthy donors while raising some of that money, it's not that my policies changed, because I don't think she would admit that, but she could say, I began to feel myself taking on their worldview, even though I knew I didn't agree with it. A line like that, that's easy. Put that out. It's fine. You can admit that because you have now moved away from that. So she could say, and when I began to notice that, that's when I decided I can't take, big donor money for my campaign, because I don't want that to impact me, because it's natural as a human to be impacted by your environment. She could have said that, would have been an incredible line, but she danced around the answer. So that's it's unfortunate. Elizabeth Warren has great moments, but it always feels like there's something that she won't say. Like she'll get to a point and she won't always get as far as you want her to get on these issues when it comes to explaining how she feels about certain policies or how she's impacted or how she would have felt impacted by money. She could have gone farther, and she didn't. All right. Ooh, nearing the end, kind of, almost. All right. I got a few more stories. Let me, I think I saw more super chats. John Crow says, feeling the burn from Texas, my friend. Keep up the great work. Thank you, John. Thank you very much for your super chat. All right. Let me get to this Bernie ad. So Bernie Sanders has a new 30-second TV ad out, and it focuses on money in politics. So this is an issue that I think people are largely able to understand. I mean, most people get, there's even lots of polling on this, most people get that money has a corrupting influence on politics. And the Bernie Sanders campaign speaks to that as the campaign that completely swears off private fundraisers, doesn't have any corporate backers, no corporate money, simply relies on individual donations, mostly small individual donations, averaging $18 a piece. But let me show you this ad where he really centers, where Bernie really centers this issue.
My opponents will tell you that campaign contributions to the wealthy and the powerful don't have an impact. Why do you think these CEOs are making contributions? When you make those contributions, you're first in line to get your concerns taken care of. I believe in democracy, not billionaires owning the system. Our campaign is funded by the working people of this country. We need to take on all of the corporate elite. We need a government that works for working families, not just big campaign contributors. I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message.
So there you go. And it is like, it's really hard to get all of that into 30 seconds. He explains it all. He explains how the system is corrupt, shows you an example when it comes to, executives here, when it comes to companies paying nothing in taxes, like Starbucks, like Delta, John Deere, Whirlpool, Amazon, Honeywell, like it keeps going on. So all of this is very effective, I think. And then he connects it to how he raises his money from individual donors, largest grassroots donations campaign, and has an example of him, marching with people to end corporate greed. All of this in 30 seconds, I think it should be effective on people that I think understand this issue. So if they can connect Bernie Sanders to this issue of money in politics, then that will, I would assume, open people a little more up to supporting him over other candidates that don't care about this issue at all. All right. All right, let me do a little bit on impeachment. It's not going to be too much, but I have some clips I want to share because they're funny. But I just got to do a little bit here. Actually, this is a hard one. Let's just get into it. It may just be me showing clips here, but I'll discuss this. All right, so Donald Trump has been impeached by the House on 2 articles of impeachment. Now, it's not going to Mitch McConnell's desk yet. Nancy Pelosi is holding it right now. Not really sure what her strategy is here yet, but I think we should wait and see and see what she has planned. But I want to show you some clips here because, look, before this impeachment vote happened, a lot of people in the House, most of them, if not all of them, spoke on this issue and whether Trump should be impeached or not. And there is some absurdity. So actually, before I even get to these clips, there's this idea out there that the Democrats shouldn't do this because they're too focused on impeachment and they're not doing anything else. When in reality, the House has passed over 400 bills, including bills involving raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, a bill on equal pay, a bill on bringing down prescription drug prices. The House, the Democratic-controlled House, has done a lot. But Mitch McConnell is sitting on all of that, on all those bills. So the real issue here is the Democratic Party hasn't been communicating well enough everything they are doing in the House and really showcasing how Republicans are holding up vital pieces of legislation that Americans could seek or could look to benefit from. But back to impeachment, though. This is some of these. So I got 3 clips to show you. This first one, it's kind of hard to argue that it's not the craziest one because it is clearly the craziest one. This guy right here, who is this? Representative Loudermilk, what a great name, compares Donald Trump to Jesus Christ himself.
Before you take this historic vote today, 1 week before Christmas, I want you to keep this in mind. When Jesus was falsely accused of treason, Pontius Pilate gave Jesus the opportunity to face his accusers. During that sham trial, Pontius Pilate afforded more rights to Jesus than the Democrats have afforded this president in this process. I yield back.
First of all, let's separate Jesus for a second from this conversation. What he just said is not true at all. They could have brought up whoever the hell they wanted. Donald Trump himself could have been out there defending himself. He didn't want to speak on this issue. I mean, what does that tell you? And then you bring in this idea that Donald Trump, just like Jesus Christ, just like, these are the kind of arguments that many of us were sitting through. I didn't watch, it was like, I don't know, like 9 hours. I did not watch it all, but I watched a good chunk, and it was incredibly frustrating because you know a lot of these people are full of crap, and if they're not full of crap, then God help them. Let me show you another argument here. So this is from Chris Stewart. This guy pretends that the GOP never impeached Bill Clinton over lying about an affair.
Covered something recently. It's shocking, I know, but it turns out that some people don't like President Trump. They think he's loud, they think he can be arrogant, they think sometimes he says bad words, and sometimes he's rude to people, and to their sensitive natures, they've been offended. I get that, I really do. But let's be clear, this vote, this day, has nothing to do with Ukraine. It has nothing to do with abuse of power. It has nothing to do with obstruction of Congress. This vote, this day, is about one thing and one thing only. They hate this president. They hate those of us who voted for him. They think we're stupid. They think we made a mistake. They think Hillary Clinton should be the president, and they want to fix that. That's what this vote is about. They want to take away my vote and throw it in the trash. They want to take away my president and delegitimize him so that he cannot be reelected. That's what this vote is about. And for those who think this started with this investigation, what nonsense. You've been trying to impeach this president since before he was sworn into office.
Let me just pause him right there. There's video of Republicans discussing how they will try and impeach Hillary Clinton. And it's before, obviously, she was never elected. During the election, they were talking about how Hillary Clinton will need to be impeached. They impeached Bill Clinton. Actually, as we're going to get to here, he's going to pretend that this impeachment of Trump is going to lead to, it's going to lead to a pattern of behavior where every time we're going to be impeaching presidents, Bill Clinton was impeached over lying about an affair. And then George Bush lied Americans into an illegal war in Iraq, and Nancy Pelosi didn't think that was worth impeaching over, even though it was. She should have pushed for impeachment of George Bush. But, like, who set the actual precedent when they tried to impeach and remove Bill Clinton over an affair? Just this world they live in.
Some of you introduced articles of impeachment before he was sworn into office.
No,
this isn't
not true.
Something you're approaching
How do you do that?
carefully and mournfully and sadly. The chaos, the sadness. This is something you're gleeful about. And you've been trying to do it for 3 years. And it's very clear. You don't have to go back and Google very much to find out that is the absolute truth. I could give you pages of examples of things you have said for 3 years about this president. That's what this is about. And if you think if this impeachment is successful, the next president, I promise you, is going to be impeached. And the next president after that, if you set this bar as being impeachable, every president in our future will be impeached. It erodes our republic in ways that our founding fathers recognized. They got it right. High crimes and misdemeanors, other than that, settle it at the ballot box. I look forward to that day.
If you impeach over crimes that Trump 100% did, it's going to set a crazy precedent. Not like the one that we set back on Bill Clinton. Other world these people live in. So let me show you an actual coherent argument. This is from Jayapal on why Trump should be impeached.
Mr. Speaker, this is a day of accountability and defending our democracy. The facts in front of us are clear. This president, Donald J. Trump, coerced a fragile foreign ally to investigate his political opponent and interfere in our elections. And he leveraged critically needed, congressionally approved military aid to Ukraine. The president's allies want to claim that he did this because he cared about corruption. But if President Trump truly cared about corruption, then he would have listened to the talking points that were prepared by the National Security Council on anti-corruption. He did not. In fact, on those 2 calls with President Zelensky, he never mentioned the word corruption. He did not abide by the Department of Defense's own recommendation that Ukraine had passed all the anti-corruption benchmarks, and he didn't listen to the unanimous conclusion of all of his top advisors that he must release that aid to Ukraine. He did release the aid in 2017 and 2018, but not in 2019. Why? Because in 2019, Vice President Joe Biden was running for president. Because this is not hearsay. We have a responsibility. The president told us himself on national television exactly what he wanted from the phone call with President Zelensky. He came onto the White House lawn and he said, I wanted President Zelensky to open an investigation into the Bidens. He solicited foreign interference before. He is doing it now, and he will do it again. The president is the smoking gun. Our founders, Mr. Speaker, entrusted us with the awesome responsibility of protecting our democracy, which gets its power not from the bloodlines of monarchs, but from the votes of we the people. Without that, we are no longer a democracy, we are a monarchy or a dictatorship. And so today, to uphold my oath to Constitution and country, I will vote to impeach Donald J. Trump. I yield back.
There you go. A lot better than Trump's Jesus. I'll tell you that. All right. Hopefully the last thing ever on impeachment. Even though I don't cover it as much as it is, but it's too much. I just feel like it's all obvious. What is there to discuss, really? All right, 2 more stories left, and they're good ones. But before I get there, let me hit up some more of these super chats. All right, G says her weak defense of issues causes support to drop. I think you mean Elizabeth Warren. Like when it comes to Medicare for all? Yes, indeed. Liz Beesmear says Bernie was more aggressive this time, and I loved it. Yeah, totally. Bernie being on the offensive works, especially as you're going to see tomorrow, as I teased earlier. Tomorrow I have a video going out about a focus group's reaction to the debate, and you're going to love it. But you got to wait till tomorrow to see that. Rachel Atwood sends a super chat in saying Warren is genuine in her commitment to do right by the people. The problem is she tries to please everyone. Bernie has long made peace with having enemies. Yeah, good point. Yeah, Warren does try to please everybody, and she can't. That's a great point. Rachel Atwood again saying there should be no louder milk than blowing bubbles. Thank you for that. Milo Wadlin says, hi, Sherry Addis. Milo says, hi, Sherry. All right. 2 more stories. Just going to prep these links here. Just a couple of links. So on Twitter, CNN host Wilf. Let me start that over again. Wilf. I said Wilf instead of Wolf. On Twitter, CNN host Wolf Blitzer shared a old clip from 2008 of Donald Trump discussing how he thought Nancy Pelosi was too easy on George Bush, and that she should have pushed for impeachment. Now, what's funny about this, as I'm going to show you, is that Trump's actually correct. He's right about this. But it's funny how people just completely morph into other people when, I mean, Donald Trump is completely obsessed with his own ego, with being popular with his weird base of supporters, I guess is the nicest way to phrase it. That, like, it's weird that the Trump that you see now is the same man that we're going to see from back in 2008. So check this out.
Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker?
Well, you know, when she first got in and was named Speaker, I met her, and I'm very impressed by her. I think she's a very impressive person. I like her a lot. But I was surprised that she didn't do more in terms of Bush and going after Bush. It was almost, it just seemed like she was going to really look to impeach Bush and get him out of office, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing.
Impeaching him?
Absolutely, for the war. For the war.
Because of the conduct of the
Well, he
war.
lied. He got us into the war with lies. And, I mean, look at the trouble Bill Clinton got into with something that was totally unimportant. And they tried to impeach him, which was nonsense. And yet Bush got us into this horrible war with lies, by lying, by saying they had weapons of mass destruction, by saying all sorts of things that turned out not to be true.
Like, he's right. 2008 Donald Trump is correct on this issue. Where did this guy go? Like, his brain has totally rotten. I mean, this is not the same person. I mean, it's funny. In 2016, he had made, negative comments about George Bush, and the base loved him for it. Like, because he was speaking his mind. And here he's speaking his mind, and he's correct. Bill Clinton was impeached over a lot less, and George Bush wasn't impeached over lying Americans into an illegal war. Now, this clip goes together with another clip I recently covered, but I want to share this again because it was so crazy when this went out. So this is, I think, last weekend, where Nancy Pelosi admits that she knew Bush lied Americans into an illegal war in Iraq, and she didn't think that was impeachable. Watch this crap.
So, Speaker Pelosi, you resisted calls for the impeachment of President Bush in 2006 and President Trump following the Mueller report earlier this year. This time is different. Why did you oppose impeachment in the past? And what is your obligation to protect our democracy from the actions of our president now?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up the question about, because when I became Speaker the first time, there was overwhelming call for me to impeach President Bush on the strength of the war in Iraq, which I vehemently opposed. And again, I have said it other places. That was my wheelhouse. I was intelligence. I was the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, even before I became part of the leadership of Gang of Four. So I knew there were no nuclear weapons in Iraq. It just wasn't there. They had to show us. They had to show the Gang of Four all the intelligence they had. The intelligence did not show that that was the case. So I knew it was a misrepresentation to the public. But having said that, it was in my view, not a ground for impeachment. They won the election, they made a representation, and to this day, people think that it was the right thing to do. The people think.
Like, she's so disconnected from reality. Now, I know I already actually have a video on this video, so I don't need to go into the whole thing again. But to not understand that lying Americans into an illegal war in Iraq that cost the lives of, estimates between like 200,000 and 1 million people. I saw an estimate from a university that looked at numbers from Iraq, Canada, and the U.S. They all were doing like the same kind of study looking into this. About 500,000 deaths from the Iraq War. A lot of those obviously civilians. That not impeachable? Like, It's stupid. And at the same time, like, this shouldn't take away from Trump's impeachment, because what Trump did, in addition to everything else he did that isn't part of the articles of impeachment, Trump is definitely impeachable. Like, what they're impeaching him on is definitely impeachable, as are the other things that they are not getting him on, like the financial crimes, the hush money payments, the kids in cages at the border, violations of the emoluments clause. I mean, go on and on and on. There is a lot to impeach Trump over that they could have added to these 2 articles of impeachment. But, like, you wonder if Donald Trump lied Americans into an illegal war, if they would have pushed to impeach him. Because apparently that doesn't matter to Nancy Pelosi. It's unbelievable. But seeing Trump back then support the impeachment of George Bush, it just shows you how, what can happen really in 10 years. All right, the last story I'm going to do is a breakdown of this week in polling, and it looks pretty darn good for Bernie Sanders, I got to say. There's actually a number of links for me to get to here. I'll just click them as I go. How about that? That's what I'll do. All right. So this has been a really good week in polling for Bernie Sanders. I have a number of polls here I'm going to show you, and his support continues to increase. So let's get to the first one here. Here we go. Nevada. This is the Nevada straw poll. Sanders, 33%. Warren, 20. Biden, 17. Yang, 7. Booker, 7. Steyer, 7. Buttigieg, 6. Klobuchar, 2. Castro, 2. Already off to a great start here. Let's go to Morning Consult. Morning Consult, you see Biden still in first at 29, up 1 since last week. Sanders, 24, up 3 from last week, the biggest gain out of anybody here. Warren's up 1, Steyer up 1, Buttigieg remained the same, Yang the same, Booker the same, Bloomberg down. And by the way, in case you're wondering, how the hell is Steyer at 10%? He has poured $80 million into television ads. So the only person spending more is Bloomberg, the other billionaire. And then the same week I saw those numbers. So this is over the course of a week. 80 million over the course of a week on ads. During that same week, the third place person was Bernie Sanders, who spent 8 million. So Steyer is trying to buy his support here. Let's dig a little deeper into this one, though. So every week, Morning Consult updates these numbers. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. So here you go. This is Democratic primary voters. Biden at 31, Sanders at 22. But when you go to early primary states, actually, before I go on, this is really a 3-person race right now, because 15% is the cutoff for delegates in primary states. So you have to hit at least 15% to get delegates from a state in the Democratic primary. So right now, this clearly appears to be a 3-person race. You go to early primary states, a lot closer. And this is where Bernie, if he's able to flip some of those early states, if he can win Iowa, win New Hampshire, it will completely flip this race on its head. Biden will drop immediately. But you see here, he's within striking distance, 29 to 24. And then Warren stays there at her 15%. So looking at early states, this is really a 2-person race. If we go down, I think there is more information down here. Here we go, second choices. So these are also updated every week. Biden supporters, their second choice is Bernie Sanders, as has been the case for a while now. So people that are wondering, how are Biden supporters, how is their second choice Bernie Sanders? Because a lot of this isn't really based on policy. So while, Bernie's policy is solid, Biden's is not. Biden has a horrible history. A lot of the support behind Biden is because of name recognition, because of attachment to Barack Obama, because they see Biden as this sort of working class guy, even though he's not. He just kind of makes himself appear that way. So a lot of that support can go to Bernie Sanders when Biden begins to drop more. And then Warren, Buttigieg. We look at Sanders supporters here. Their second choice is Elizabeth Warren. This is not all that surprising. Though it is surprising, Joe Biden in second here. But again, that goes to what I was saying earlier, where a lot of the support that is sort of the uninformed liberal is kind of going between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. Andrew Yang, 8%. That's an interesting drop down there. Warren supporters, their second choice by far, Bernie Sanders. Also not surprising if you're looking at policy. Joe Biden at 20% there, Pete Buttigieg at 15%. So again, if Warren drops, say she doesn't win the first few states and she drops out of the race, a lot of that support can go to Bernie, especially if she backs Bernie immediately, which I would hope that she would, because there is no one else in the race that comes close to representing that message. Go down here to Buttigieg supporters. Elizabeth Warren is their second choice at 24%. Then Joe Biden, then Michael Bloomberg and Bernie. I got to wonder, who are these people that support Buttigieg right now, but their second choice is Bernie Sanders? Like, the platforms are just completely different. The candidates are different in every way. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Bloomberg supporters, their second choice is Joe Biden, 33%. Then Elizabeth Warren, then Buttigieg. Not all that surprising there. All right. There's more polling that I got here. Let's go to California. What's California looking like? California KQED poll, and the change is since October. So Sanders leading here, 26%, up 2. Warren's down 5 at 23%. Biden is steady at 19. Buttigieg is up 3 at 12%. Yang plus 1 at 4%, and the rest kind of just fall off. So there you go. Bernie leading in California. Another good indication here that he's doing quite well. Let me go to the next. Actually, I think there's more details about this one. Oh yeah, so this goes into the California poll a little bit more. I'm not sure if there's more that I can pull out of this. So that's the results in graph form. You can see again, really a 3-person race here. Bernie, Warren, Biden. Here we go. So Sanders, some of this is good. Sanders' strongest demographic groups are men, 36%, of voters under age of 49, and Latinos, 37%. Warren is best with women at 26%, but her support is fairly evenly distributed. Among California's black voters, Biden retains a solid support, 47%, followed by Warren at 13%. That's a huge gap there. That's tough. Top choice of Asian voters is Biden, 32%, followed by Andrew Yang at 28%. And I think there's more here about, so we can look into this a little bit by race. So Asian, Bernie Sanders 17% compared to Joe Biden 32%, Yang at 28%. So Bernie's in third there. Black voters, Joe Biden way ahead. Bernie Sanders in California, black voters really low. That's not a good number. He's got to get that up. Elizabeth Warren's in second. And Hispanic, Bernie by far, 37%. Next closest is Warren at 17%, Biden at 16%. And then we get to white voters, and it's Warren leading with 31%, Sanders with 23%, and then Pete Buttigieg. Cool. We got more. Let me go to Emerson. Emerson poll. Biden, 32%, Sanders, 25%, Warren, 12%. Again, going to the idea that this is a 2-person race. So right there, Biden and Sanders at the top of this. I think there's another piece of this that I want to dig into. Here you go. Emerson's latest poll shows Sanders with by far the most solid support of any candidate. So this is what I was talking about earlier. People that support Bernie Sanders are likely going to stay with him. So 71% will definitely vote for this candidate. That's huge. Biden's next closest at 57%, and then Bloomberg, and everybody else around 30%. Interesting. So This again goes to Bernie's ability to stay strong with his support base and stay strong throughout the primary process and not lose his voters to other people. This is a hugely important number. Do I have more? I do. One more poll. Here you go. Bernie Sanders is the candidate leading with non-white Democratic voters. So even though he's not doing well in California among black voters, he's doing very well in California among Latino voters. But nationally, Bernie Sanders is doing very well with non-white Democratic voters. 29% to Biden's 26%, Warren 13, Buttigieg 6. Again, showing you Bernie has this very diverse coalition of young, even old voters, black, white, Asian, Latino. So his support is all across the board. I mean, largely from younger voters, from voters under 45, but he still has, I know from my followers, because I hear from them, supporters that are a little bit older as well. All right. That's it. That's it for the polls. Let me finish off super chats. If I have any left, if you want to get super chats in, get questions in, comments in, send them in now. And then I'll get out of here. All right, where was I? Polyfufu sends a super chat in saying, "Thank you, David, for speaking truths. Wishing you a Merry Christmas from my basement as I cry liberal snowflake tears." Merry Christmas to you, Polly, and everybody else. Yeah, this is the last live stream before Christmas. When is Christmas? A Wednesday? Is it a Wednesday? Yes, it is. Interesting. All right. I assume I'll have a live stream next week. Robert Penner says, Bernie's surging since October. He should have more heart attacks. Don't say that. That's funny, though. But it shows you, like, it's not even just that, right? I mean, clearly Bernie is a lot more energized, I think, since the heart attack. I was hearing this, again, I'm not a doctor here, but having a stent put in can apparently really do wonders for your energy because you likely were already having issues before with your heart. You just didn't know about it. So allowing the blood to flow more, I don't know what's the word, more thoroughly, more cleanly through your heart, really gives you more energy. So Bernie clearly more energized. But it's not even just that. It's since that happened, he's gotten endorsements from AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Michael Moore, endorsements from big progressive groups like CPD Action. So really, like, the entire movement has really picked up for him since that happened. So I think that's a huge part of it. But Robert, thank you for your funny comment. Let me refresh this. Is that it? I think that's it. All right. There's like a minute delay here. It's funny. Every time I say I hate missing super chats, because right when I go offline, oftentimes like one or two come in. That happened yesterday and I felt really bad about it. Actually, let me go back and read that super chat. I doubt that person's here. But here we go. Bernie for Us sent this super chat in after I went offline yesterday saying, "It's important people know how to vote." Yes, it is. In fact, let me do what I do almost every week at this point. Voteforbernie.org, because it is incredibly important to share this around. That's what I'll do. So get your super chats in now if you're going to get one in, because there's a minute delay. I'm going to talk about this for a second, and then hopefully they'll all be in by the time I'm done. But here you go. Voteforbernie.org. Voteforbernie.org. FOR. You get to this page, and it tells you, like, hey, I am... Let's say... I need to zoom in more closer here. I can't. Okay. Let's say you're in Minnesota. Minnesota is... That's Montana. Primary is open June 2nd. Register by to be determined. I'm not sure what that means, but make sure you put your email in, your zip code in, and then you will be able to get all that stuff figured out. What else here? Utah. Closed primary. Must register as a Democrat to vote for Bernie. Same thing. Zip code, email address, get that in. So this is where you go to ensure you can vote on time in the primary. All right. I heard one more super chat, I think. Let me just quickly hit that up. Andrew Dyer says, will the debate stage be smaller next time? Yes. So what I've seen 5 people. I think 5 people have made it for the next debate. So Steyer has not made it. Yang has not made it. So Yang has made it with, I think, individual donors, but he hasn't made it in polling. Steyer hasn't made it in 2 polls and hasn't made it in donors. So right now it appears to be a 5-person debate stage with, Bernie, Biden, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and Warren. I guess that's what it's going to be unless something changes. So the debate stage will hopefully be smaller because it better be. It has to be. And maybe we'll get lucky and someone like Kamala Harris will drop out even though they make the debate stage. Who knows? All right, last super chat. Just heard it come in. Tony Vicente says, thoughts on Bloomberg's goons shoving Amy Goodman. Did I cover that? I don't think I did. I think I was going to cover that. So I didn't see them shove her unless that's a different clip. But Bloomberg was blowing her off. Like, he was not answering any questions even though he's running for president. Here's the thing. I don't think Bloomberg's much of a threat right now. He may try to run as a third-party candidate if Bernie or Warren win the nomination. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I don't want to, I don't know. I don't want to worry too much about that stuff until we're there. So there you go. Again, voteforbernie.org. That's where you go if you want to support me as well. rationalnational.com/join. All the links are below the video. You can do that. And this has been a lot of fun. And I'll be before I go, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I'll be back next Friday. See you.